So hopefully you guys heard that. You probably didn't. But that was Bex from Fliptronic. So without further ado, there's one other person here. We can get started. I'm going to go ahead and bring Porgy in. One moment, please. All right. Porgy, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
All right. Give me just a second. I'll get my little face down here in the corner. I'm going to overlap you for just a moment. I guess I'll be on bottom. I can be right down here in this tiny little window. You see me?
No.
I'm down here.
Oh, and I see you. Yeah, great.
You're up there.
There you go.
Okay.
Now we see you.
All right.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going, man. It's going. How's it going at your place?
Good, good, good. Long time no talk.
Yeah. I see you've been working on some stuff at home, and I see you got a Rigmaster there. Let's talk about that tonight.
Yeah. I reached out to Arnoz, and I figured there was enough people in our community that had a lot of questions on how to utilize some of this hardware. And the guides are great from Arnoz, but he's French, and a lot of people don't understand what he's saying, which is okay. So I figure we can, I've used a couple of his boards now. They're great boards. I've tried different solutions. So, I enjoyed the pinscapes that Mike was throwing out there. And then I stumbled on these boards, which are really great boards. They're modular. They let you kind of expand on the way you're trying to do things and how you want to build your cab. So I said, what better workshop than to kind of get into Arnos's products, since they're really great products, and help people understand how they connect and what each piece really does.
That's what you and this other jerk in the Discord keep saying. This is great stuff, great stuff. What is a Rigmaster? I mean, you say modular, but the Rigmaster looks pretty big. It looks more like a brain of some sort. What are all the green things hanging off of it, and what's how do you get power to it? I don't see a USB port on there for me to plug it into my computer and my buttons to magically work. I mean, what is this thing?
Yeah, so I mean, it's very modular design in the sense that it's giving you some connections here to plug certain things in, and we'll go over what you can really put into this board. Um, and how you could take this board and expand to something where you have something like this that has 16 outputs. It has the ability to even push power through it. You have your inputs as well. You have your mollusks, which we'll go over, which is basically an expansion board off of this board, to give you even more outputs. I think up to 192 or 256 outputs, something crazy like that. As well as hooking up something called the brain, which I will go over, which has a bunch of buttons for your your ROM volume and everything like that. Or you could just do something within the coin door that's already there and hook those buttons up and utilize those buttons like an original coin door that has those volume up, volume down, service button, and your enter button. So this
It's
board has that ability to do that. If you look on the back here, you'll see there's some connectors here, and that's actually where we're going to plug our KL25Z. And let me just pull this out just so you understand what this is. And you're talking about hooking this up to your computer. I'm pretty sure most people are familiar with this
okay.
board
Yeah,
because
Mike had
this
that
is
on
kind of
Pinscape all in one.
yep.
Yeah.
Yep, Mike has this.
Huh.
Paul at Virtua Pin has this, modified for his solution for the digital plunger.
Sure. I think Zeb has a version of it as well.
Zev has a version, and there's just some people just use this, and put pins into it, and then they have breakout boards like MOSFET
Wow, you
board.
can make this thing yourself. You don't have to go
You
buy a
could,
product. Really?
yeah.
Wow.
So you don't have to just buy a product, but if you want to buy something that's plug and play, we have a couple of solutions here, right?
Okay.
Um, so So I will show you. I mean, this board is pretty. This came from Arnoz. He already puts the pins on it facing up. So this board actually snaps in to the Rigmaster. It just sits right in there, and you press it in, and that basically gives you that connection now. Your mini USB ports to your PC, and now that gives you the ability to access this board.
Let me ask you, those things. I mean, in the past, I do remember reading something about having to program them. Is the one that comes from Arnoz pre-programmed, or is it something I am gonna have to learn?
You will have to jump into the Pinscape tool. I know that Mike or Mr. J from the Mr. J guide that you guys have seen, and Arnos have been working together to actually integrate the Rigmaster, the KL Shield directly into the Pinscape tool, so you don't have to do any weird firmware flashing. And it's just a very quick, easy setup for this.
Okay.
Some of his stuff is pre-configured, at least to work out of the box. But this is something, especially with the outputs you have here and your inputs, depending on you're using them, they are labeled, but they don't have to be used as what they're labeled for, especially the inputs. So you could change almost anything on this board and what it does. The outputs are going to give you can put whatever you want on this for the most part, depending on the amperage, because these only support 5 amps per. And then the inputs, you can, it says volume up, volume down. These are pre-configured in his firmware, but we could change anything on this board to for different inputs if we
So
need
it's
to. Let's
fair
say
to
we want to
say
play.
if I have an existing KLZ that's been programmed for something else, I could probably go to Arnoz's site, grab the latest firmware, flash that puppy. But if I buy it from Arnoz and it comes with the KL25Z, then it probably comes pre-programmed from him with the firmware because it looks
It
like
has
from his
some of it in there,
website
yes.
that
Yep.
okay, that takes a lot of
Yep.
work out of it.
It takes some of the work out of it. I would say in this hobby, especially when you start getting into this type of stuff, you got to be a little patient, right? You got to be willing
Oh sure.
to do some reading, take some advice from people who've done it, and just learn the hardware as well as a little bit of the software. And once you do that, you're gonna just start figuring stuff out real easily. It's the initial setup that gives it a little bit of
It's not an
a little bit of time.
amateur's hobby.
Not. I mean, maybe to start, if you have something that's pre-configured like Zeds. Zeds makes it kind of plug and play.
Okay,
There's
good.
a couple other solutions out there I think that are easier to work with,
Yeah,
but
we can
this is
cover those
more of
another
your.
time.
Yep, these are more of your amateur slash, more matured into a, full build of a cab where you're doing full feedback. You're looking to do, a shaker motor, a gear motor, a blower. You have those abilities to do that here. Or if you're just even if you're adding flashers, you need some type of MOSFET to drive those, right? So,
Okay.
this is a solution we're going to be looking at today.
Yeah, it looks good.
So yeah, so this is his main board, and I'm just gonna kind of show you guys a couple boards that Arnos has. I also have another board here that I just brought out, and we'll go over this on another workshop. But this is one of his boards for the Pin 2 DMD board. I just kind of put this on my workshop bench here just because I wanted you to see that he has a plethora of products that are just awesome products. So I just stuck this out here to see it, but we're not gonna be working with that today. That's for
Okay.
Pin 2 DMD if you're going down that route. Um, One of the boards here, and I'm just gonna bring a couple here on the screen so you guys can see them. I'm gonna slide this over. Um, we got them. As you can see here, we have a Moss Light. Let me get my hands out of the way. A Moss 8. We got a Mollusk. We have another Mollusk, and and we have the brain. Let's go pull the brain out, and I'm gonna pull out the Potar. So
Is a mollusk a type of crustacean?
sounds like it, but no. This is basically your driver board for more toys, adding more toys onto the Rigmaster. So,
Oh, an expansion card for my
yep,
Nintendo 64.
you exactly.
Wow.
We're gonna add feedback to your Nintendo 64 where it rumbles your butt while
Wow.
while you're playing video games.
I'm
But
excited.
well, if you look at the Rigmaster here, you'll see that there, and I don't know if you guys can read that, but there's actually 8 digital outputs on it, 8 PWM outputs on it right off the board. That's the great thing about the Rigmaster. His original KL Shield didn't have any, MOSFET directly attached to the original board. That's why he built this board. It's more of like a Pinscape Lite, if you guys are familiar with those. Um, and you're able to drive 16 toys right off this board. So if you're not doing a lot of toys, like if you're only doing, you know, 8 solenoids and a gear motor and a shaker motor, and you're not adding all the RGB lighting and stuff like that, this board might just be enough for you. You can get away with just this board.
With
Um,
16, 8 and 8,
yes,
yeah.
yeah, 16 outputs. Kind of gives you mostly everything you need. You see it's got 12-volt coming in. It's got a bunch of grounds to get good ground continuity to to your terminal blocks. So this board alone could power most people's cabs. Most people aren't gonna work outside of this.
It's fair to say though that's for a very basic. So if you were to get some basic toys, as you said, like 8, and, a gear, just a few things, but you wouldn't have buttons that light up in the front and work with direct output feedback, right? Because
I
you
mean,
just don't
yeah,
have enough
it just
outputs.
depends on what you decide is
Sure,
important to you,
sure.
right?
But that's where
Maybe
the
you're the guy that
expansion
only wants,
modules.
yeah, maybe you're the guy who only wants a shaker motor. You want all your lights to be driven by direct feedback, and you want only 3 solenoids. Well, guess what? The Rigmaster will do that for you.
Okay.
But this is where I say this is a great solution, because now let's say I went and bought this board. I built a cab. It had a shaker. It had a couple things, and now I want to build out. I want to put a whole I want to put RGB buttons in, and a flasher bar with 5 flashers. 5 flashers. Most people don't realize this is 15 outputs if they're RGB, because red, green, blue. Each one uses each one uses an output, so you need to be able to drive that with something. So that's where Arnoz come up with this modular solution where you can just keep adding boards as you need.
Okay.
So you might spend money on this board, and then that's all you are budgeted for the month, and you say, okay, next month I want to add something else. Well, you can go buy these other boards as you need them. You don't have to buy them all at once, which is great.
Okay.
So I'll just show you generally. I mean, so let's say we did have a machine where we're looking to add. We're just gonna go ahead and add let's just talk about the like an RGB button, right? We're gonna add like your flipper buttons. Again, I have here. Let's see here. I have here as Arnos creates these boards. These are awesome. Called the RGB button board. It sits right behind, right between your flipper button and your tension nut, so they can. And if you have if you have a clear button, this will illuminate it. So,
And that's the RGB version. The other one I've seen is the MX, which is addressable.
yep,
Is that correct?
yep. So yeah, and we'll go over that at a later time. I'm
Sure.
I'm gonna stick to the more direct feed of a direct feedback
Yeah.
from a
Hey,
toy.
let's take a quick break. Just say hi to people joining in. Joe, welcome.
Hey Joe,
Good grief. Always good to see you. Welcome, Selenia.
oh, we got a crew here. How you guys doing?
That's awesome. Hey, Patrick, do you want me to focus in on your workshop a little
Yep.
more? So,
Yeah, let's do that.
I mean, not that
Pop
don't
my
want to
head.
see your face. I think a few people might like to see a little more, and I'll stay here. So hopefully, everybody can see the hardware components a little better. Thanks for checking in. Welcome, T. Lee. I'm glad you came back. And Patrick,
There we go.
the floor
Looks
is
good.
yours, Mr.
All right, so
Porgy,
back
sir.
to the RGB board here for your flipper button. So as you see, I already put a connector on this. He likes to make these quick connect uh connectors, which are great. They really make it easy to disconnect and reconnect these things. But as you see, you know the great thing about his boards is he's already got your RGB outputs and the 12 volt. These are actually 12-volt driven. So all that's there. It's already wired up. And then I have the other end already wired up to another connector that's going to go into what they call the MOS light. So I'm taking one step back before I plug that in. Um, so to be able to power this up, there's a couple things we could do. We could plug it directly into the Rigmaster if we have enough ports. Plug in your 3 outputs and then drive your 12-volt directly to your 12-volt terminal block. Or we can use my preferred method is use his MOS light. So we have a MOS light here. And if you look on the left side of the MOS light, you're gonna see 16 outputs, and I'm sorry, 16 inputs. Those are the inputs coming off of, not directly, and I'm gonna say this. This is important. Is um, not directly off the Rigmaster, because we have to have this mollusk board,
What?
and we'll
Yeah.
explain that more.
Why don't we explain the mollusk, where it connects to the Rigmaster,
Yep.
what it's used for?
So again, I know Arnoz is gonna beat me up for this, but this basically, I'm gonna bring this down to layman's terms. This is an expansion board. He can probably go into the more technical aspect of it, but this board right here basically takes a signal off of the main board here. It's multiple, digital outputs, a PWM output, and then your 5 volt and ground coming off that Rigmaster, which is right here. This is actually, if you see, it actually says extension and mollusk on this board. So this is, data out, and it's going to lead into data in on the mollusk. So I actually have a connector for that. And if you look here, I'm going to plug this guy in. I'm going to plug it into the mollusk. And now for the first time, we now have 16 more outputs coming off this. Now, you can't just plug toys into the mollusk because there's no MOSFETs here. You're going to blow this board,
Right.
okay, if you try to plug anything in. So now that this board is just basically an expansion board, and the reason he gave you this extra board, yeah, he could have built this board into the MOS light and it could have just been one board. Sure, he could have done that. But the smart thing he did is he made this board universal. So you can use this board for the MOS Lite, which has 16 1 amp outputs for, let's say, your RGBs, or you could plug it into, 2 of these MOS 8 boards. They have 16 counting. You take 2 of these, you have 16 outputs here, or you could even do one of these and one MOS 4, or a MOS 8, or you could do again the MOS Lite. You have totally
You
different
have
options here,
options. Yeah. And
which is great. So you can use this board
Grief's
for.
asking a question in chat. Grief, I'm unsure what you're asking. You say, are those dedicated parts for the expansion board?
Yeah, these ports here that say expansion,
Oh, yeah. Are
extension,
they?
and
Yeah.
mollusk, they are dedicated for
A mollusk.
the
Yep.
the mollusk. That is a whole. That's what that export is, or that port is for. So you're plugging your data out to that into your mollusk, and that's what's. And then again, now I have 16 ports. I can now tap into this as a data out on here
Put another mollusk
and
on?
go into another mollusk. So I
Wow.
can basically daisy chain mollusks and get another 16 outputs. So if you see how this is going to kind of flow, you could continue doing this as many as you need for
Sure,
more than
until
enough
you have
toys.
all the toys that a normal
Yep,
pinball machine has.
yep. And
That's
in my
incredible.
last build, I used 3 of these things because the gentleman I built a cab for, he wanted every toy you could think of.
I had no
So,
idea. We just met today. I really appreciate you sharing this knowledge. It's incredible. I might go out and build my own virtual pinball cabinet. I'm excited.
well, we'll do it on a weekend
Oh,
whenever you
yeah, and
get some
I didn't
time.
mean to interrupt. You were about to tell us about the Moss Light.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go. So for now, I don't have to daisy chain this because I'm only for today putting 16 more outputs on. So yeah, I want to take a couple outputs off the mollusks here, and
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and plug that in. And you know what? Let's do it like this. So ports 1, 2, and 3, red, green, blue. I'm gonna plug that into my mollusk. Or I'm sorry, I'm badgering the words here. The MOS light. And
Moss
I don't know
Light.
if you guys see this
So
here. I'm
we've
gonna
got a
try to.
Rigmaster, and it's
I'm
going
gonna
to a
clean this up here.
mollusk on the inputs. And then
Yep.
on the outputs, it's going to a Moss Light.
Yep. So I'm gonna lay this out so you guys can kind of see this connectivity here.
Hmm.
So today, from what I'm showing you, we're getting the whole data feed from the mollusk, from the Rigmaster to the mollusk. Okay, so that's driving now. That's driving all 16 outputs for this. Right now, I have 3 outputs wired up to the MOS light.
Okay.
Okay. So that 3 outputs. Now I want to go ahead and say I'm going to hook up my RGB flash or my RGB flipper buttons. So I'm going to plug that into my 3 outputs here. If you notice, there's 4 wires. I'll explain that in a second. There's your general flow of connectivity just to wire this flipper RGB PCB up. Okay.
Okay.
Now, if you notice, there's 4 leads on this, not 3. There's that 12-volt lead coming off. Well, this board, which is kind of cool about this MOS light, is that it's actually able to draw power from the 12 volt that powers the board itself. Each one of these boards have to be powered by 12 volts. I don't know if you guys can tell that. There's 12 volts here, 12 volts here. There's actually 12 volts on this board, and every board he has 12 volts because he has indicator LEDs when you actually when you actually fire a feedback, you'll see it turn blue. It'll show that it's active, so it's good to troubleshoot and stuff like that. You have that ability to troubleshoot these things. If you think about the RGB, good grief, the grounds are really your red, green, and blue. That's your ground. The power is actually getting the 12 volt directly to the.
Hey, thanks for the follow, Mr. Invisible Man. I can't see until it appears in chat.
0123.
I will fix that.
So yeah, that's basically your general flow just for hooking up a flipper button. Now that's using, if you notice, that's one single device that you're only going to see in your cab, lighting up a single button, your flipper button, but it's using 3 outputs.
Right.
So, if you have two flipper clear flippers and 2 magma, and you have a fire button per se, that's 15 outputs. That's 15 outputs that you have to use if they're all RGB. That's going to use 1 mollusk and 1 moss light. Besides,
Well, I
one
believe
extra
even
output
on
for it.
Arnoz's website it says 1 Moss light will suffice a flasher, 5 flashers, and 2 strobes.
Correct, because you're going to drive the strobes on the same
That's going to
output.
drive
Yep.
all the same amount. Yeah. So.
Yep.
So for instance, I know a guy, my neighbor. He's got 2 of those Moss lights. 3 mollusks and some other parts. Yeah. Okay. I get it now. Thanks. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So no, you're good. So and even here, like, let's say we only need these. We're on a budget and we only need 8 outputs on the MOS light because it's only driving 1 amp. And we bought something a little bit bigger, heavier duty, like this MOS 8, which supports 8 amps per output. We can also tap off the same mollusk. We could tap off the same mollusk and go into the MOS 8 from the same mollusk if we wanted to. We could go this route if we're not using up all the outputs on the MOS light if we wanted, and power up 8
Grief
more
asked
here.
a good question because you got some awesome looking wires there. Did that come with the system, or is this just a bare bones and you run your own cable to it? Because
I ran my own cable. None of this was wired.
So
I
there's
just wanted to give you guys a presentation here.
Yeah, there's no connection cables that come with it, but there are those little green things I see that I keep seeing you pull out, right? I forget what they're called.
I forget what they're called too. They're just modular connectors here that
okay, little screws that you can tie the wire into. Oh, nice and snug. Okay.
Yep, and good grief, just so you know, there is, from my experience, again, I know Arnoz will probably tell differently here, but
he won't understand this. This isn't in French.
Yep. There is a distance issue if you're getting too far away from your data feed.
You're killing my tips and tricks stream, man.
Well, I'm just telling you, I tried running a mollusk to the back box and then powering up a MOS light from there, and I was having all types of data issues. So, I think the mollusk should stay close together just so your data feeds are short between those, but then your outputs can be as what you need them to be anywhere within the cabinet.
But so short runs to the mollusk, long runs can go elsewhere. Otherwise, your mileage may vary.
Yeah, and you're gonna have weird firing issues if you don't. That's something I've experienced in personal builds myself.
Okay.
So this is just different ways to present how we're gonna get our outputs, right? So we can get our outputs off of MOS 8, which are larger outputs. That's the best way I can explain it. Is it's 8 amp outputs. We could hook our knocker up to this. We could hook our shaker up to this. This is gonna handle those bigger toys, right? Where the MOS light is really meant for, in my opinion, your lights. You can hook up strobes. You can hook up your flashers. Those are the kinds of things I would hook up here. And personally, for me, if it was a build I was doing, I would always have some type of mollusk, probably 2 in a full build. I would probably have 2 mollusks, one that drives 2 of these MOS 8 boards, one that drives a MOS light, and then that will handle most of my toys. And then I have the outputs on the Rigmaster for pretty much the other things that I need to use, like if I want to hook up my beacons, I'll hook it up there, or if I want to hook up my outputs for my buttons on the front of my cab. Those I kind of plug directly into my Rigmaster. Where these bigger guys, I'm driving, my RGB flashers, my RGB buttons, and these are, I'm driving my knocker and my shaker because I use. I don't know if you know this. I use real flippers, real slings, real bumper mechs for my builds.
Well, hopefully we can show those in a future video. Maybe power some
Yep.
up. I mean, I know we're not going to cover it tonight, but we probably should talk about one of the connections to any toy is going to go to this device chain in some
Yep.
way, and the other one needs to get power somehow. So
Correct.
I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions about that. We can cover that in a subsequent build.
Yeah, and if you see here on all of his boards, which is something a little different that I haven't seen any other distributor that makes these type of boards do, he's putting your fuses on every
But
single
those are just
output.
fuse holders, right? They don't come with
Yep.
fuses
Actually,
pre-populated.
the Moss Light does. The Moss Light comes with 1 amp fuses already in because that's all you're really driving on this. So he throws them in there. He doesn't throw them into this board because you're not. He doesn't know what kind of amperage you're going to be using. So you could be using 3-4 amps for a single coil. Same with this board. You're putting your own fuses
So
in. So
all
that's a
have
unique thing.
built-in fuse holders. Some have fuses in them if that's
Yep.
confusing. But yeah, just grief in general, just get a box of fuses. Slow blow, fast blow, Mr. Porgy, any
I like to
recommendations?
use slow blow for pretty much any of my coils. Anything that I know that can accidentally fire, or that can blow a fuse easily without going over amperage because it has random spikes here and there. Um, but at the same time, you can I find that the fast flow ones are on the safe side for people that are just not familiar with this stuff. So, um, yeah.
Okay. And
Uh,
for you, T. Lee, we are hoping to put this as an instructional video for people, so I'm not mentioning that at this time. Um,
so
go
So
right
yeah,
ahead.
so this is our general flow, and I know this is probably crossing over and people getting a little confused here, but as you see, I mean, I can this is the cool thing about modular. I mean, we can go directly into mollusk into two Moss 8s like we are discussing. That's what can drive these because you have 16 outputs coming off this. Or, again, I could just pull these guys away because I don't need them. Maybe the build's smaller, and I'm driving a Moss Light, which this is going to be fully populated if I'm using all the outputs here, 16, 16, and I could drive this board off the mollusk, a single mollusk, and come off. And then again, down a later date, I can tap into the data out, add another mollusk, and then add more, uh, you know, Moss 8 boards, even add another Moss Light if I need it, if I don't need a lot of it. If you're adding like 5 flashers and strobe and you're adding all those RGB buttons, you're gonna need two Moss Lights probably, for this type of configuration. So,
Okay. And
um,
I'm sorry.
go ahead. No.
So you're not going to show us lighting up a toy tonight, right?
Not tonight. I
Yeah.
think that's definitely coming down the road, just
No,
for
no, that's
more
fate.
exciting stuff for you guys to see.
Yeah. But let's go back to the Rigmaster for a minute.
Sure.
You've talked about the mollusk, and that's where you just pulled out there.
Yep.
You've talked about the coin door functions there on the left,
Yeah, so let me
and
pull that out since you mentioned that. So I have this thing called the brain, right? So Arnoz makes, he has these outputs here, really is your brain data, which is the way I can explain it is, your volume up, volume down. You can have your night mode set up on this. You can have all your service buttons. Those are the buttons that are inside your corn door on a real pinball machine. And then you have a calibration, which you could do for your plunger directly off this board. So he creates this nice little brain board, which I can also share. I'll have to share in our link for this. Is I did create an SLT where you could 3D print it and attach it to the coin door. So this is like something that you can have on the coin door, have a harness coming out, and this can basically turn your volume up, turn your volume down. You can configure this directly, and this is already pre-configured to the board, so you can just basically, if you notice, it's a direct connection, wire for wire into the Rigmaster, and this gives you all, if you think about it, there's what 10 buttons here, 9 buttons here that you don't have to wire up individually to do something on your
So,
cabinet.
so
They're already on here.
alternately, you could have 10 buttons underneath your cabinet to do all these functions. You could
Yeah,
probably
wherever you
also
mounted this, yeah.
you could probably also go buy a real pinball coin door and wire that to these outlets, right?
Correct.
If
So
you wanted to. But
so
this
that's
has
my
all those
preferred method.
buttons plus the night mode. So
You got it.
nice.
Yeah, so this is, I think this is the easiest method here for anyone who's a little gun shy and doing a lot of wiring. I prefer to go the route of using, as making my virtual pin look as much like the real thing that you have to like second guess what you're looking at. So, um, so this is just another solution that you'll have an option for. Great solution.
Hold on, party. We can't hear you for a sec. Thanks, Blue Patrol. Appreciate the follow. Go ahead.
All good. The other thing that I think you're going to run into is the potar, right? Being able to hook up a real plunger to to your cabinet and being able to utilize a plunger in the way that it feels like a real pinball machine.
Okay.
So this also, if you look at the Rigmaster, there's a 4-pin output here, and if you let me show you here, I can actually use the same cable since it uses such a modular design here. Um, he's got 4 outputs coming off this, which is your launch ball, ground, plunger, and 3.3 volts, which is what you need for this guy to be powered up because it is a PCB. I can take this, plug this guy directly in, and I got myself a fully working plunger.
That doesn't
That
look like a plunger.
I know it looks weird, but there's a 3D print that you'll have to look at. That's open source as well as he sells it, that goes around this, and it attaches to your plunger. So when you pull it back, this little potentiometer is going to be moving back and forth, um,
Oh,
registering your pullback and when it slings forward. It's a great
wow.
design. And for
Is that called a potentiometer?
potentiometer,
I
that's
have one of
correct.
those in my iPhone.
Well,
Wow.
I would imagine so.
Did Steve Jobs help Arnoz?
You also have an accelerometer in your iPhone. Did you know that?
I did. Thank
Oh,
you.
okay, good. We have that. By the way, the Kale Shield provides that.
What?
So
Wait.
if
I'm sorry. I thought you were playing with me. This
no,
has an accelerometer? What can I do with that?
so the accelerometer will help you with your nudge. It can work as a tilt if you have it programmed properly within
What?
VPX. Yeah, it's a great little solution. So when you're moving your cabinet around, it's gonna feel like there's a real ball in your cabinet.
The ball's going to
It,
move when I
it's
nudge the right
manipulated.
of the cabinet?
You got it.
Oh my gosh. That's
Super fun
amazing.
stuff. I know the technology and the things that the virtual pinball community have done is amazing.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know what? Good grief. I actually have the KL Shield in my cabinet. That is another solution that I don't have here on my table. But basically, the KL Shield, and if you have a Moss 8 full, is equivalent to what the Rigmaster
Yeah.
is.
It's still a modular component. It's just the Rigmaster is his later design. Is that fair to say?
It is. This was more of a demand that he met that a lot of people were asking. So
So the KL
you do.
Shield plus one other toy would replace all the functionality the Rigmaster has.
Yeah, Rigmaster, you do not need the KL shield because the KL25Z is mounted on the bottom of this guy, just like the KL shield has it mounted on the top of it. Or actually, I think it's on the bottom as well.
Yeah, you need for any solution you pick, you'll need one or the other, either a Rigmaster or a KL Shield. Is that fair to
Yeah,
say?
I would say equivalent. If you want to equivalent the two, a KL shield plus a Moss 8 full equals a Rigmaster.
But if I went out and bought a KL Shield, I didn't waste my money. I just have to buy something else to make it more like the Rigmaster. Is that
Correct. You're just gonna add. You gotta utilize those modular pieces to
sure?
get the outputs you need. So at this point, if you notice here, we're talking a little bit about this potentiometer, the POTAR. I use this actually on my cab, and the reason I use it is because my cab doesn't actually have a launch button like a lot of these virtual pins that are being built. I know everyone usually drills a hole for that, but I try to keep my cabinet looking like a stern as much as I could. So I utilize at the end here, if you notice here, he actually has a connection here, which is for the launch button. And on his 3D printed design, there's actually a momentary press button that he gives you in his in the 3D printed parts that you buy that can attach that attaches on the end there and utilizes these two ports for ground and your launch ball, so you can actually have it where when you push in the potentiometer on your or your plunger on your virtual pin, it can hit that button, that switch, and trigger a launch ball without having a launch ball button on your
But that's
cabinet.
only if you order the 3D print from Arnoz, correct?
He will give you. I think he has all of it open source, and you can buy a small, little switch, little micro switch there
Okay,
for that
so
to do it
the
yourself.
3D printed plans are on his site, and then you just buy the little button that's equivalent to what he sells pre-made on his.
Correct, and it's
Okay.
very. The price is actually very comparable. It's very cheap. He sells
Ah,
it for a great price. So,
okay.
uh, so yeah, so that's getting us into this getting us that plunging ability like a real pin. Um, and yeah, I mean that kind of covers at least the general use of this board. You know, in my opinion, when I saw Mike, get away from his all-in-ones and Pinscape lights, I was a little bummed. And I was trying to think, okay, what kind of other solutions were out there that really bring a high quality, board to the table that people don't have to build themselves. They don't have to pay ridiculous amounts of money for. I think Mike made his prices very comparable to what time he put into them, and I think Arnoz is doing that too. He's selling these at a good price. Again, you know that as you are building along, you might not have all the funds to buy all the parts at once that you need. So you could just go modular and you can build things as you go, which is amazing. A lot of us have to pinch sometimes and do that. So it's very nice to have this design.
Okay. Well, we really appreciate your knowledge. I mean, I don't know anything. I do have a neighbor who built a pinball machine recently, and he bought the Zeb's plunger and went out and bought a TV, and he threw it in a cabinet and got all excited, and he was showing me, and it was pretty cool. Had some nice subwoofer and speakers in it, and then he just recently built another one, and he's got all this Hotar stuff. I think it's really cool. But he said, much like Grief said, oh, I wish I hadn't bought in that Zeb's plunger. I wish I'd known today what I knew yesterday. But that's part of the joy. This hobby is constantly changing, right?
Yeah, I
As I'm
mean,
getting ready, go ahead.
no, like you said, things are changing and evolving. I mean, um, I've only been in the community for a couple of years now, literally 2 years. I probably been Good Grief and I were in the Discord that we're all in now. I think when there was only what Good Grief, there was maybe 300 members, and now it's grown to 5,000. That just shows you how much the interest has grown in this community. And with a lot of other companies now doing their own thing on the virtual pinball community, it's getting a lot more people interested in it. So to have a solution like Arnos is, or even Zeds, I know everyone brings their own thing to the table. I'm enjoying, you know, seeing how this stuff evolves because as there's competition and as there's people trying new things like we are, like the big thing right now I've been trying to do, and this is trying to go with real mechs, using real pinball parts
I've
to get the
always liked
closest feel.
BattleTech myself. Yeah, it's good stuff. Um, no,
So
all
it's
kidding
constantly
aside, I
evolving.
completely agree with you. Real hardware mechanics are the way to go. Solenoids are fine, but outside of the look and feel, my personal opinion is that the maintenance level required on solenoids, you end up paying more than you would for real mechs. So just go with real mechs. You get the diodes pre-attached. You get the real feel. You get the real sound. You can put a little camera inside your cabinet and show people you have real hardware, or have them look in the coin door. It's something really to be proud of. And, I think the number one selling point for real hardware is the whole maintenance over time. Um,
Yeah, I
but
mean, again, I think it's a labor of love. It's a lot, trying to figure out how things are going to fit in your cabinet. But, at the end of the day, all of us, the reason we're doing this is we want to have that feeling and to trick our minds to think that we're playing a real pinball machine, right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So, the closer we can get there, which we're getting so close. I mean, the guys at VP Workshop are doing such amazing work on tables. I wish I could contribute the way they do. But at the end of the day, this is where I think, we can start helping these guys find a better way to build their cabinets. Um, you know, Especially for the guys that don't know how to build a PCB or know how to order, a million parts off of Musser and build their own Pinscape board that's DIY, which is available by the way. You can get that,
Well,
but it's a lot of work.
definitely. And now that the show's over, it was nice to pretend I don't know anything, but I've learned a lot through the help of the gentleman in front of you. But Grief, just like you, I mean, we all make bad decisions and then we seek out those that have the best knowledge. Part of Porgy and I's intention with this channel to begin with was entirely to help people understand why we think the way we think about these, why we make the decisions we make outside of the posts, and hopefully provide some content in an episodic format so that we can cover all areas. You mentioned something on Real Mechs, it's in the works. You mentioned something on anything within the arsenal of what's in pinball, we're hoping to cover it. Right now, we're just
Yep.
focused on Arnoz's products. There's a lot of people buying it right now. There's not a lot of information that's readily available that actually is. I'm sorry, Arnoz, but it's not very useful. And when I ask a question, I don't always get an answer that makes sense to me. So I feel like if Porgy and I get a good understanding of it out there, now that we've grasped it a little bit, we can all start to learn more. We can document it better and maybe create some instructional YouTube videos to be helpful, like other members of our community, Major Frenchie and some of the others, Nailbuster, that have created so many great things that basically got us all interested in this hobby and got us started. It's time to take it to the next level. It's time to review new stuff, get it out there, get talking about it as a community, and see where we can go. So, Grief, look forward to more content. Um, Obviously not next week, but hopefully we'll do a weekly series where we do an episode each week until we get through Arnoz's stuff. Um, I'd like to also get some of Zeb's equipment and do some of his equipment and review that as well. That way there's a sampling of all the available technology people can use. So stay
Yeah, I
tuned.
mean, we have a lot of different solutions out there. There's so many different ways to kind of like, do it's how do you dress up the pig, right? You could dress it up in any way you like. So, there's, just for, your general feedback of, using your flippers, you can do, these contactors. You can use thunderclaps. You can use real flipper mechs. I mean, you can use the car solenoids. There's so many different options. And my plan is to be able to place all those on something that at least represents, what you'd see in a cabinet and say, okay, this is them firing individually. This is what they sound like. This is what they'll feel like. Here's the DB data behind it. That's something that you'll see in our upcoming videos. For now, these boards are a great tool in the pinball community right now. I'm using them for my builds. They're my go-to boards right now, just because they're, like I said, modular, and they give me what I need when I need them. So, I want people to learn about them because I know it's a French product. Arnoz builds great stuff. Language barrier does create an issue for people understanding how the boards work. So, we're on Discord for the people that are new here, and
And we're
you
on
can always
a
reach out to us.
Discord called Virtual Pinball Chat. You can look it up. There's also a link if you look in the Twitch stream. There's two Discord buttons. One is orange and one is blue. They're very well labeled. Please use it. Myself and Porgy are there. One of my passions. I really enjoy helping others. So if you're building a cabinet and you want to come in and ask some questions, don't be afraid. Now that you've put a face to a name, um, David, I'm going to ignore that for the moment, and I'll get back to you.
He's just clicking every time he
I
hits
know,
his flipper buttons. He slaps the side of his cabinet.
I know.
It's funny.
Yeah, we all have our needs, right? Cool. Okay. Um, so yeah, we'll be covering this in much greater detail. We hope to provide some excellent content for you guys. In case you're nitpicking me, because I'm sensitive about it, I will be fixing all of these webcam elements that aren't working quite right, how I'm moving outside my edges of my own layout. I did rush this together. We were delaying workshop after workshop after workshop, and I wanted to stop delaying it. So the best thing to do was just to put the first one out. I'll be rewatching this to learn from it as much as I can and see how we can improve it. Um, to those of you who didn't get to watch this live that are watching this on the video on demand, don't worry. I plan on doing a few daytime sessions when we're both not busy, to try to accommodate all you guys if you have any live questions or you want to get in. As I was saying earlier, but I cut myself off. If hopefully seeing us here, being a little jovial, me acting like a noob, makes you feel a little more comfortable. Porgy and I are very approachable. Don't hesitate. We just want to make you more comfortable with the people in your community and get you to come out and ask for help. So hopefully this stream was informative. Porgy, do you have
Yeah.
anything else you want to add?
Just probably for the people that are here, as you guys see this channel evolve, all these boards you see here up will come up for prizes at some point. I literally purchased them so we can do some educational videos. So I have no use for them right now, and even though I probably could in the future, but they're all going to be given away for some some swag at some point here or another. So